It's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. In today's episode, I'm going to begin by talking about how innovation is something that we don't appreciate as much as we should. And I want to give you an example straight ahead about things we're doing to deal with shortages in the world as just a single example. Also, I've shared stories recently about many Americans, especially people that are older, being taken advantage of with technology schemes. Well, there's a new bank doing something that I really love to prevent fraud from happening, or at least reduce the amount of fraud that's happening. And it's a great lesson for other financial institutions. So, the Mountain West faces a critical problem with water, the supply of water. California, until the atmospheric rivers, I think they were called, that dump so much snow and rain across California, led to unfortunate flooding, of course, had been in an extremely severe drought. And we have been so dependent at a time that weather patterns have gone through a cycle of some parts of the country having much less than normal rain and snow, other parts of the country having excessive amounts of rain, not necessarily snow, that water has become critical. And I've read so many stories in financial publications about how water is such a great thing to invest in as an individual because of the water shortages that are popping up, not just around the country, but around the world. And that this is going to be a can't-lose way to get crazy rich, is if you have access to ownership of water supplies, you're going to make all this money. And so let's talk reality. Yes, we do have problems with having reliable water supply. Yes, there have been people who have scored big gains investing in water and thinking moving forward that people are talking about food shortages and all that, but that the real shortage that's going to be so critical is water. What does that ignore? What does that ignore? When you get to a point that the economics changes, people come up with other solutions. And for many, many years, as a source of last resort, we've had desalinated water. And water desalination has been looked at as an absolute last option because it used enormous amounts of energy to produce and was so crazy expensive per gallon produced. But if you think that's where things are going, you're guilty of something all of us as humans are guilty of. It's something known as static analysis. Well, that didn't work, so it's never going to work. The reality is that the economic need, the practical need for water, is leading to breakthroughs that are fantastic in the production of what's essentially unlimited supplies of water from the oceans and the seas. Because now the technological improvements have been so enormous that water that is desalinated is so much cheaper than it used to be. And, you know, this is why, one of the reasons that I am an incurable optimist. Because I believe that once we focus as humans on a problem, we come up with solutions. So often people feel like things are never going to be better than they are right now. And things are so much worse now than they were, fill in the blank, how many years ago. But human beings have, first of all, there's the profit incentive. And second, there's the innovation that happens because of people who dedicate their intelligence, their time, their lives to creating breakthroughs. I mentioned the other day, just in passing, the change in survival rates from cancer overall that have happened just in the last 60 years. Unbelievable improvements in survival. And now, it's getting steadily better and better with targeted medicine down to the individual person. And we can come up, have so much ability as human beings to adapt, to innovate, and to solve problems. And this is one we're going to be able to solve. And I think about, you think about how much breadbasket there is for the country in inland California and in the mountain desert west, and how I've been so into the idea of building these vertical farms where you grow in a temperature-controlled indoor environment. And it's because of the water shortages, because you need less than 1/100th of the amount of water to grow in a controlled environment what you do in a field. But what I never saw is this other thing, this other form of innovation, which is coming, which is the ability to create what will essentially be an affordable, unlimited supply of water. So yes, we do have problems. Every society does. Every era, every generation. But never underestimate the ability of humans to solve those problems. Christa?
All right. Well, Aram in California has I wouldn't say a problem, a question for you. I'm a teacher currently at a public school who might get a private school position in the future. The private school pays more, but I pay for the benefits, so the take-home pay is about the same. I get a California teacher's pension at the public school, while at the private school I would get a 5% 401k match plus Social Security income when I retire. Which do you think is the better fit for me?
So this is a tough call. The public school teachers in California get a wonderful deal if you're willing to put in the time. If you expect to spend your whole career as a teacher, you love being in that classroom, and that's what you're going to do. From a strictly financial standpoint, you're going to do better over time putting the years in for that pension, because that pension will provide you lifetime security. There are people who give up that pension because they love the additional freedom they may have in the classroom, in a private school. They potentially may have more motivated students, possibly, in the private school. They may like the culture better in a private school. But if you're just asking money, and this is what you plan to do as your life's work, then financially you're going to do better staying in the California system as a public school teacher.
And thank you for being a teacher. Teachers are so needed.
You still talk about some of your favorite teachers from when you were in school.
Ms. Ronnie Hunningsbaum, who listens to the podcast, my third grade teacher. Bridget in Pennsylvania says, if the crystal balls are correct and rates come down, how should I prepare to refinance my mortgage? What types of upfront costs will be involved? Closing costs, down payments, etc. I want to make sure we're prepared enough with enough extra cash on hand to seize the opportunity if and when the time comes.
Well, gosh, this is a blast of the past. I think about for like 8 years, we had question after question after question of every angle of doing refis when rates hit, because of the manipulation of the Federal Reserve, they hit this abnormally low level, historically low level that so many people have. And this woman to my right is way beyond Dean's List with high honors with your mortgage 15-year fixed rate you refied into at
875. I feel like the audience is sick of hearing about my
No.
low mortgage rate.
It is such an incredible thing you did, seizing that opportunity. So we're not seeing those things again, but we are going to have opportunities for people who took out loans after rates normalized and then they went higher because of inflation, that you're going to have an opportunity to refi. So when that time comes and it's going to feel right to you, you'll know that the math works. Number one, you want to be able to recoup whatever closing costs you have in 30 months or less. And why do I use the 30-month rule? Because we may have another cycle, could be a bad recession, whatever, where rates do go lower than their historical averages, and you end up refining again. So then you ask the question about costs and what kind of money you're going to have to pay. So when we get into a meaningful refi cycle, you're going to have lenders that offer no or low cost refis and then normal refis. And with the no or low cost, what happens is you accept a higher interest rate on your refi in return for having low or no closing costs. And so then that makes the answer to your question hard. But there's something else you need to know. Credit unions have become, they're almost dominant at this point in mortgage loans and mortgage loan refis. And credit unions, because they're owned by their members, tend to offer the best deals. And big credit unions, a lot of them hold mortgage loan refis in what's known as in portfolio, meaning they're not selling them off in the secondary market, and therefore they're going to have lower closing costs than you may have traditionally had if you've been a long-time borrower with mortgages over a number of decades. So shopping around is key, and as a general rule, writing banks out of the equation, because mortgage lending is controlled overwhelmingly by what are known as non-bank lenders and the credit unions at this point.
Kelly in Ohio says, when you receive unwanted emails and hit the unsubscribe button, sometimes it will take you to a page that asks if you'd like to unsubscribe from all. I always hit yes. Now I'm beginning to wonder if by doing that, instead of just deleting the email, I'm confirming my valid email. Could this be the case? And is there a way to stop these? Why do I have to do this when I didn't solicit any of the emails?
Okay, so Kelly, who knows how you ended up on the email list you ended up on, but if it is from a legitimate organization, they are using one of the big email service providers. And it is a standard kind of thing you see. I forget which one of the big email services it is, that when you go to unsubscribe, it gives you that standard chart I've seen again and again.
Yeah,
you
there's
probably have as well.
MailChimp, we use Beehive. Yeah, there are a lot of providers.
But one in particular uses that format that you're talking about, Kelly, where it will say unsubscribe from, let's say they have different, once a week,
well, they
every
all
day.
can do that. You can,
Okay.
The company can set it up how they like.
All
I
right.
have a decision tree I use for these, but go ahead.
Go ahead. Let's hear your decision tree.
So if I get an unsolicited, which is what this sounds like, I never signed up for an email with this company, then I always hit spam, because you deserve to have that black mark on your email address if you sent me unsolicited email.
So if you hit spam, will it keep any more of them from showing up in your email?
And it should. You can also
So you don't
block.
even unsubscribe.
You could also block. Yeah, I don't click on some link to unsubscribe. If I get some, like, I've never subscribed to a political email, for example. I'm getting them. They're spam. I don't want to receive them. Then if I have subscribed, which I'll often give my email address to get a discount on a first-time purchase somewhere, and then I go in and I unsubscribe later. So I do go through the actual link only if I know that I have subscribed to this company's email alert. That's it can be harsh because people don't want black marks against their...
Yeah, I'm so flaky that I don't trust myself that I never at some point signed up for something, so I do the decision tree,
Yeah.
and I just say unsubscribe.
I mean, if it's a
from all.
legitimate, like of the company.
That's
and
why I said the first thing I said
yeah.
is if it's a legitimate organization.
But it could be a fake email.
That is true.
That's the problem.
So that's why you just do the
Spam.
Spam. You ever eaten spam?
I used to love spam as a kid, which is funny because I only eat like fish now for me. But I loved, my dad would make me fried spam sandwiches. I used to eat like jerky as snacks and stuff like that. Bologna sandwiches was my favorite.
When I used to go on canoeing trips in the Boundary Waters canoe area in Canada and Minnesota, at the end of the day, the highlight was being able to fry spam.
Oh, yeah.
And it tasted so incredible.
Yeah.
I haven't had it since.
God.
Never had it again.
Yeah. Well, probably not the time for it.
I wonder how the spam makers, I think it's Hormel, how they feel about it now being associated with this negative thing. Oh, well. Coming up ahead, talk about a negative thing. Somebody who works a lifetime to build up money, and then somebody comes and rips it out of their hands in an instant. I want to talk about how one fintech is trying to help consumers avoid having their money take a one-way trip. We got a number of questions here, a number of things from people who have had their money swiped by a con. And the cons always are about sense of urgency, that you've got to do this right away or else. And before you have a chance to really think about what you've done, your money's taken a one-way trip, and there's no way for you to reclaim it. Well, this was really bothering a guy named Kevin Nazemi, I think is how you pronounce his name. And I read a story about Kevin on Fast Company, how he decided, because of a number of reasons, but especially because of people being separated from their money, to start a fintech called Charlie. And Charlie is in all 50 states. And they have come up with something as part of the app. This is one of those non-bank fintech things where when you want to send money to someone and it's not in a pattern you've ever done, it then gets hit by what they call speed bump. And with speed bump, if you're trying to transfer a meaningful amount of money to, let's call them a UFO, someone you've never interacted with on the app, they pause the transaction for 6 hours. And during those 6 hours, they send notifications by app, text, and email to you as the account owner. And then, in addition, it's going to seem very paternalistic, but it could really keep you from being separated from your money. They send you notices about different kind of frauds that are hot right now. Because again, their system picked up. There's not somebody or someone or some organization you've ever sent money to before. And suddenly you're sending money to them. They use this pause and the notifications to you to get you to say, wait. Oh man, they said that to me. Oh, they did that too. And you use that speed bump time, that 6 hours, to go back and say, nope, please don't send that money. You're right. And the real thing that this is doing is it's forcing you to take a breath, forcing you to think about what may be about to happen with the money leaving your life. And this is such a problem with the crooks targeting people and stealing their money so many different ways, so many different stories. Could involve a pretext where they pretend to be from law enforcement, from the courts, from who knows who, and making it feel like you've got to do this and got to do this right now, and if you don't, the or else, whatever or else is. And I've noticed that in financial statements now that are coming to me from different organizations, I'm getting these things talking about financial fraud. And that's a step in the right direction. But this is the kind of thing that I really like. It's using the capability of technology and how much organizations know about us as a way of preventing what could be a tragic financial event for someone of any age. Because as I talked about earlier this year, the largest target for a lot of these frauds now are people that are in their 20s because they've grown up their whole lives communicating with people and friending people who they've not actually ever met. And so they become very vulnerable to being taken in scams. It could happen to anybody of any age. We talk about it happening, all the crimes that happen towards the elderly, because that's where all the money is, people past 60. But it could be anybody of any age. And so this to me is a real innovation that one guy, Kevin Nazemi, came up with. And I love that kind of thinking, that kind of innovation. And a guy with an app who controls it is going to be much more likely to experiment with something like this than a giant lumbering mega monster bank or a giant brokerage house or whatever. But good for him, and so important in our lives to remember, slow down, slow down, slow down. Anytime somebody's telling you, this is a can't miss opportunity, you got to do it right now, or you're in trouble, you got to do this right now. Whatever it is, the right now is your tip that somebody's trying to keep you from really logically thinking through. And when somebody's pitching something to you and says, don't tell anybody about it, I want you to call that trusted friend or trusted relative and talk it through with them. And they'll be the ones hopefully getting you to slow down. Because I don't want you to be permanently separated from your money.
Okay, this question came in from Vern in California. I may be under the wrong impression, but aren't GSM SIM/eSIM based cell phones designed to pop in a SIM, activate it, and have service? This sounds like how it works across the world, except for the USA with only baby bells. Why does the FCC allow them to make it so hard to switch?
So, Vern, it's actually, the whole system is changing. And here's the important thing. AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, their whole thing is to lure you in, free phone, free phone, free phone, free phone, that is locked to them. And you are obligated to them. And it's a replacement for the contracts we used to have that you signed up with a cell phone carrier and you were stuck with them for 3 years on the most common contract. Now they're using the phones that way and using them as the thing that ties you to them and keeps you locked down. So the answer is don't fall for that con. Do not fall for the free phone con. What you do instead is buy your phone, own your phone, and then you're a free agent. Because if you do what you're talking about, like everybody else everywhere in the world does except Canada and the US, if you are a free agent, that then makes all the discounters available to you that are selling cell phone service for a tiny fraction of the cost often of what you pay AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile. So you are 100% right, Vern. Own your phone. And then with the eSIM technology, you can switch instantly. I told the story like 6 years ago when I was on a plane sitting next to a guy in Europe, and he opens up his briefcase. Who carries a briefcase anymore? But the guy opens up a briefcase, and I'm like, what is the deal with this guy? He had 4 cell phones, and he had this plastic thing with all the different SIMs for different countries. Because back then, every country in Europe, if you went from one country to another, you got completely ripped off making a cell phone call or using data or sending a text once you crossed a border.
Dude, that guy sounds shady.
No, he was a business guy, and he was saving money with all this stuff.
Okay.
Well, now you don't have to do all that stuff he had. You just have an unlocked phone, and you get an electronic SIM, and you set it up, and the first time you do it, you're like, I'm sure this is going to be impossible. This is going to be really complicated. And then once you've done an eSIM, you're like, wow, this is easy. This is so simple. And what the cell phone carriers fear is that anyone will tell their fellow Americans what you questioned, Vern, and what I just said, that now you are, if you choose to do it, you are out of the AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile prison. You are now able to be a free marketeer and save so much money.
Evan in Kansas says, I currently work at a job where I'm enrolled in an ESOP at no cost to me. I estimated the contribution amount to be 15% of my yearly gross income based on when I first started last summer. The employer 401k match and IRA yearly contributions aside, should this ESOP be counted towards the amount invested into my retirement?
That is a great question. And
that's employee stock option plan, I believe.
Stock ownership.
Ownership plan. Okay.
So there are there are various versions of this, but an ESOP is an employee stock ownership plan. So, Evan, what I have said in the past is you discount, when you're doing calculations, an ESOP by 50%. So when you're doing financial planning, when you're thinking, am I on target, the risk always with an ESOP, you've got a lot of your future wealth tied up in the stock of one company. And as we've seen over the years, you can have incredibly successful companies that lose their place in the market, and they could go bankrupt, they could go extinct, they could be bought by someone else for pennies on the dollar. And you were so heavily concentrated in that one company's future. No matter how good they are now, companies eventually go extinct. So that's why I discount the value of ownership of a company stock by half. Because you got to look at it as a 50-50 deal. Maybe it's going to maintain value. Maybe it's going to go up in value. Maybe it goes all the way to zero. And so as long as you mentally will do that adjustment and be certain you're saving enough in the 401k and IRA, you can almost treat the ESOP money as financial independence money, but it's a gamble. It's almost like being an entrepreneur when you have so much of your future wealth tied up in this one company.
Fred in Minnesota says, Clark, my son is off to college, and thankfully I paid his first semester from his 529 before the market took a hit. But that got me thinking, is it possible to pay his future expenses out of pocket and reimburse myself from the 529 when markets are more favorable to cash out?
Yes, you can. You can go ahead and pay tuition, and pretty much any point in the future you can take a withdrawal from the 529 plan and submit your proof with what you paid for eligible college expenses. But there's something else involved here too, Fred. In a 529 plan, I don't know if you went in the age-based portfolio or intended enrollment portfolio. They call it different things at these 529 plans. If you bought one that was designed for enrollment in the year your son went off to college, I guess this year or last year, 23 or 24 intended enrollment, then you got nothing to worry about. The value of the 529, since at this point it will be in the equivalent of savings account kind of stuff, should have very little movement in value, mostly up, but by little teeny amounts each year going forward. It is really risky with 529 plans to leave them heavily invested in the stock market as a child approaches enrollment in college or while they're attending college, unless, as an individual paying for that school, you have the resources that if you're heavily invested in the market in a 529 while a kid's in college, you have the ability that you have, Fred, to pay that tuition from available other sources, and then you wait to get the reimbursement, as you said, till the market is at a good point. Most people aren't in that position, don't have that financial flexibility in their lives, and that's why they should be in the age-based portfolio or intended enrollment intended enrollment year portfolio, whichever a plan calls it, so that you're not subject to big movements in the market affecting the value of the money you worked hard to save for college. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast, and know that our websites, clark.com and clarkdeals.com, are here to serve you. And I want to tell you, every single writer we have on clark.com and clarkdeals.com, in their heart and soul, in their heads, in their minds, everything they're about is providing you with information you can trust, deals you can trust at Clark Deals. Nothing's bought and paid for by anybody. Everything we do is for you, to empower you with knowledge that gives you the ability to save more and spend less and never get ripped off. See you tomorrow.